Howdy, Texans fans. What's up? I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and you are watching Texans Today by Chat Sports. We have some juicy free agent rumors to get into, but first, I have a question for all of you at home. What is your favorite moment as a Texans fan? I know it's only been, going over 20 years now as the Texans as an existence, but I just wanted to know, what is your favorite moment as a Texans fan? Two stick out to me in my mind as soon as I thought of this question. First has to be the Andre Johnson overtime screen against the Jaguars. Absolutely electric. Rock and roll, Texans! And then the second one would have to be the Arian Foster TD run against the Bengals in that playoff game. Absolutely insane stiff arm. Just gave him the business. I want to know from you, though, what is your favorite moment as a Texans fan as we get into the latest Texans free agency rumors? And hey, all roads lead back to H-Town for my guy, Deandre Hopkins. Bleacher Report listed the Texans as a possible landing spot for the former Texans Pro Bowl wide receiver. Let's see what they had to say of why the Texans should bring them back. Bleacher Report said Hopkins' career could come full circle in a second stint with the Houston Texans. Houston selected him in the first round of the 2013 draft, and he put together 3 all-pro years with the club before former head coach, one who shall not be named, Bill O'Brien, traded him to the Cardinals in one of the worst trades ever. Before quarterback Deshaun Watson arrived, Hopkins eclipsed 1,200 receiving yards with journeyman quarterbacks Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brian Hoyer starting most of the games between 2014 and 2015. He could get the job done with C.J. Stroud, who comes into the league with a 69% completion rate over the last 2 years at Ohio State. Sure, the 21-year-old will face an even field of competition in the pros, but he can continue to demonstrate efficiency with an all-pro receiver on the perimeter. Keep in mind, the Texans traded Brandon Cooks to the Dallas Cowboys, which puts a lot of pressure on Robert Woods, Nico Collins, and John Metchie III to fill a big void in the passing game. And you know what? That is true. The Texans wide receiving core does have some holes, has a lot to prove this year, even though I think John Metchie and Nico Collins are going to take that next step. I really do believe that they could, bring some life into this Texans wide receiver core. See, we actually do have the Texans wide receiver depth chart if we want to go to that in a second. But, I mean, even in a down year for DeAndre Hopkins, look at these numbers. We'll get back to it in a second, but I mean, even in a down year, he really produced. And you look at the Texans wide receiver depth chart right now, Nico Collins has a lot to prove, and he's a sneaky candidate for a breakout this year. If you look at every Bleacher Report article, ESPN article, they're all listing Nico Collins as a huge breakout candidate this year. And I tend to agree. Over the past 2 years with subpar quarterback play, he's really showed out and had some flashes. Obviously, John Metchie, this is his pseudo-rookie season after his bout with leukemia last season. He is a second-round pick and has a lot of talent coming out of the University of Alabama. And Robert Woods is a proven guy. Even though he's lost his step, he was in Tennessee last year with the bevy of quarterbacks that they had with Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis, who couldn't throw the ball further than 5 yards. So I think actually having a decent quarterback could help him this year as well. But as we go back to Hopkins, look at these numbers that he had last season in a down year that he started the year out under suspension. 64 receptions for 717 yards and 3 touchdowns, where half the year that he was in, he didn't even have Kyler Murray because he left due to injury, and he's still putting up these numbers. I think Hopkins coming back to the Texans would be a beautiful story because Houston really embraced Hopkins. He was the bridge from Andre Johnson, in his last year with the Texans, kind of taking that torch of having a great Texans wide receiver. And since Hopkins left, we really haven't had that, great receiving play. We had Brandon Cooks. He had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, was really good, but we haven't had a flashy outside receiver with the talent of DeAndre Hopkins since he left. Obviously, it's hard to replace a DeAndre Hopkins. So let me take the question back to you. I would say yes for this, depending on the deal, but I want to know from you. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. Would you bring back DeAndre Hopkins? Why for yes and for no? You get a YouTube ad break. Go down and answer today's pinned question. Like I said, I would re-sign DeAndre Hopkins for the right price. Obviously, what he's meant to this Texans franchise and organization while he's been in Houston has been monumental. I mean, you can't really describe his Texans career without saying, wowza. 632 receptions, 8,602 yards, 54 touchdowns, and 78 yards a game. And this is with quarterback, like Bleacher Report said before, Brian Hoyer, TJ Yates of hell, Brock Osweiler, guys who aren't really playing in the league. Brian Hoyer, who's the third string on the Raiders right now. Guys who are not standout quarterbacks. Hopkins, year in and year out, put up huge numbers. And I think he was the best wide receiver in football whenever he was with the Houston Texans. No doubt about it. He was at least top 3 in those years, especially with his quarterback play. Imagine if he had, a CJ Stroud or a, like we saw the years with him and Deshaun Watson. Sorry. But I mean, even in those years where we had Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, he was arguably the best outside receiver in the game. But I was putting together today's video, and I was kind of thinking, and I think most Texans fans think of this too, is he the GOAT wide receiver? Is he the best Texans receiver of all time? Because whenever you think of Texans wide receiver, you think of two guys. You think of DeAndre Hopkins, and you think of my boy, Andre Johnson. Like I said earlier in the video, his screen pass against the Jaguars, absolutely electric in overtime in that game. But, I mean, we look at Andre Johnson's receiving stats over the years with the Houston Texans. I mean, multiple seasons where he had over 1,500 yards. Over 1,500 yards. And, him and Matt Schaub, even though Matt Schaub gets a lot of hate now, he was a pretty good quarterback with the Houston Texans. And what him and Andre Johnson were able to do, getting the Texans, AFC South titles, getting them into the playoffs. Andre Johnson is arguably one of the best Houston Texans to ever strap it up. But I don't know whenever it comes to, who is better. Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, they are both amazing wide receivers. And I just this one's hard for me. I want to know from you, though, who is the better Texans wide receiver? Who's the Texans wide receiver GOAT? Andre Johnson or DeAndre Hopkins? I honestly don't think you can go wrong here. I lean more towards Andre Johnson. Just personally, growing up, remembering Andre Johnson and all the great memories that I had watching him on the football field, him whooping Cortland Finnegan's ass. That's why I'm typing my AJ. But let me know in the comments, who do you think is the better Texans wide receiver? As we go from one former Texan to another former Texan, a former first overall pick in the NFL draft, Jadeveon Clowney, the 33rd team suggested the Texans bring back Jadeveon Clowney this season. And I don't know about that one, Jim. Let's see what they had to say about it, though. Well, he could return to the team that drafted him first overall in 2014, the Houston Texans. They selected Will Anderson third overall in the draft, and their new head coach, DeMeco Ryans, is a defensive-minded coach. Jerry Hughes had 9 sacks for the Texans in 2022, but he's older, 35 in August. And Jonathan Greenard missed 9 games because of injuries. I can see Clowney going back to where he started his career as an ideal fit. And, down year last year in Cleveland, and what really stuck out was how he ended his career in Cleveland, with reports saying that he didn't want to go in on first and second down. He only wanted to go in for third down to get more sacks, which, he got 2 sacks last year. So, really not doing that well. But, would he return to the Houston Texans where it all started, where we took him with the first overall pick in the draft? I don't know. Obviously, he played with DeMeco Ryans, or did he? Maybe he played on the tail end of DeMeco Ryans. I'm getting a little foggy brained here, but obviously he has the connection with the Texans. DeMeco Ryans knows of Jadeveon Clowney, and you look at the Texans' D-line depth chart. Will Anderson, the 3rd overall pick in the draft this year, should bring a ton of juice to the D-line. Jonathan Greenard, a young pass rusher who has a lot to prove. Chase Winovich signed this offseason. Jerry Hughes, an older guy who produced a little bit last year. But is this Texans D-line really, taking that next step forward, able to, put some pressure and have the Texans compete this year? I really don't know. And I think, bringing back Clowney, it could be okay. It could be a decent idea, but I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze with this guy. Obviously he's had some off-the-field issues, some locker room issues with former teammates. Do you want to bring that into a young locker room with young guys? I'm not sure, but I want to hear from you first. Would you bring back Jadeveon Clowney? Type B for bring him back. type Kiefer, keep it away. Let me know in the comment section. Like I said, at the right price, sure. Like I'm not banging on my desk saying we need to sign Jadeveon Clowney now. But if it is a 1-year prove-it deal, if we get him at a low cost, I don't think it could hurt because this Texans D-line is less than proven. Obviously, you have Will Anderson, and maybe having Jadeveon Clowney, a veteran, come in. Obviously, you have Jerry Hughes, another veteran, that can kind of teach him the tricks of the trade. But you'd really want to see this Texans D-line take a next step forward. Bringing in Jadeveon Clowney could help a little bit, but like I said, is it worth it? Is it worth what he brings into the locker room? Can he come in and be a positive influence on the younger guys? That's yet to be proven. So I'm saying if it's a 1-year prove-it deal, sure, give it to me. Anything more than that, I'm good, guys. And like I said, still tipping on 4-4s. I'm bringing you the latest Houston Texans news and rumors all year long. And all you got to do is hit that sub button right there. Go ahead and hit it and get Texans news and rumors all year long. I'm going to be bringing it to you during the season. And word is, hey, we get enough subscribers, maybe we go live for a Texans game this year, maybe a live show. I don't know. It's up to you. Go ahead and hit that sub button right now if you love the Houston Texans. And go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Chat Sports. You can find me at Jeremy Chuggs as well on Twitter. Maybe on Threads. Are you on Threads? If you are on Threads, follow me. Jeremy Chuggs, Jeremy B. Follow me. I'm trying to get my Threads game up, kind of get in the game, even though it's kind of like, I guess, a knockoff Twitter. What are we thinking about Threads, Seeps? You're out on it? My producer, Seeps, saying he is out on Threads. I'm in right now. I'm all the way in. So thread me up, baby, and get the latest Houston Texans news and rumors here at Texans Today. I'll see you next time. Have a great day, Houston.